It was such a normal morning, almost comically uneventful. For the first time in what felt like forever, the morning newscasts had very little to say. They covered Fashion Week, some protests in the Capitol, a new health craze sweeping the nation, a funny viral video of a dog eating a pancake, the inspirational story of a young boy from the Midwest beating cancer, a minor political scandal out of Tallahassee, Florida that nobody would remember in a week, a round of interviews with an expert who'd written a new book about the long-term effects social media might have on our children. None of them knew back then that long-term was a luxury they couldn't afford. People went to work, to school. Some took the day off. Plenty took walks or jogs, deciding to exercise outside for a change. After all, it was such a beautiful sunny day out. What a terrible shame it would be to waste the light indoors. People were sleepwalking, so placidly, blissfully unaware of what was rattling down the tracks towards them. It was an uncharacteristically slow day down at Site 19. There hadn't been any containment breaches in over a week. A couple of new anomalies had been brought into containment, one safe class and one Euclid, but neither were the kind that was likely to bring the SCP Foundation any trouble. Right now, the biggest threat facing their employees seemed to be boredom, and they definitely take that over any other members of their rogues gallery. Dr. Bright poured himself a mug of nice, hot coffee and decided to watch some TV in the break room just to pass the time. The President of the United States was giving a press conference on the White House lawn, surrounded by microphones. It was really nothing special, just the same inane babble about how he was going to fix the deficit, and with inflation on the rise, we'd all need to work on being more fiscally responsible. The Immortal Foundation researcher sipped his coffee. These normal, boring problems felt like the perfect escape from the insanity he needed to deal with every day at the Foundation. The president was saying something about the importance of families and about farmers being the nation's real backbone when something happened. There was an odd shift in the quality of the light. Dr. Bright barely registered it. Maybe it was something to do with the cameras. However, things started to get stranger. The president's speech began to slur, as though he'd just been pumped with enough morphine to take down an elephant. But it wasn't just that. He was sweating buckets, too. Wet patches expanded all over his suit, and perspiration was dripping off his skin. Dr. Bright was in suspense. Was he about to watch the president have a stroke live on air? Would he be called in to replace him yet again? But no. The situation unfolding was far, far worse. The President of the United States slumped forward over his podium while the reporting corps screamed. His face sloughed off his skull like melting wax, the President's words slurring off into infinity. It was the worst a US President had looked on film since SCP-3008. Dr. Bright dropped his coffee cup. It tumbled and shattered onto the ground below. The camera fell as the operator screamed. It pointed down into the crowd where the reporters were shrieking in pain and terror, steam coming off their bodies with the sudden intense climb in heat. They were all melting. All of them were melting before his very eyes, broadcast out to how many people? It would be the mother of all containment nightmares. Little did Dr. Bright know, that wasn't even the half of the true horrors unfolding. Alarms went off across every containment site in the world. Any SCP Foundation employees unlucky enough to be standing outside at the time were lost in the rapidly unfolding horrors. They screamed as the sun cleaved their atoms apart, reducing them into semi-liquid states without the mercy of death. People lucky to be just out of the sun could only watch as those less fortunate disintegrated across the ground in unholy shrieking puddles. Never had such a normal day been thrown into such terrifying chaos in so little time. Billions of voices cried out at once as the sun changed in the sky above them. Since the dawn of humanity, it had given us everything. Light to bask in, warmth to keep us safe, and the life of the plants and animals that kept us fed. It had been worshipped as a god by countless cultures over thousands of years, one great mother to all of humanity. And now, that mother was drowning us in the bathtub. And perhaps the most frightening part of all, it was for seemingly no reason at all. The SCP Foundation was forced to now break their silence forever. The masquerade, the veil, it melted along with so much of humanity. They took over every communications channel in the world and did what they could to inform people on how to get out of harm's way. Stay inside, wrap yourself in sun-shielding clothing, and only move at night. Air travel is preferable, if possible. If you can, make your way to one of the SCP Foundation's secure sites, their only chance of preserving humanity and figuring out how to reverse this new nightmare. Now more than ever, the SCP Foundation would be humanity's only hope. Until, of course, there was another terrifying twist in the tale. While those who were melted into piles of living flesh sludge were sadly assumed to be lost, even the Foundation didn't expect the transformed humans to become a threat in and of themselves. Just as their bodies were melted, so were their minds. They became slaves, cultists of the growing tyrant hanging up above. Some would coagulate into huge fleshy masses, horrifying threats that would seek out victims, overpower them, and drag them out into the light to be absorbed and transformed. Even those hiding inside Foundation containment centers weren't safe. These behemoths of melted flesh would find their way in, using their many twisted voices to slowly break the minds of their victims, then gather them up with great flesh tendrils and yank them out into their doom. Little by little, the numbers of humanity dwindled. It looked like we had a bright future ahead of us, and in this particular context, that's far from a good thing. Survivors, for whatever time they had left, would forever remember this walking nightmare. The Foundation dubbed it SCP-001 to reflect its ultimacy, but to everyone else it had a different name: When Day Breaks. In a world where anything but darkness will kill you, is there anywhere left on Earth that's truly safe from the horrors of SCP-001? 5 months into the never-ending horror of the solar singularity, Alice spooned herself a bowl full of warm Swedish meatballs. Delicious. She was part of an investigative detail from a nearby community deep within the bowels of the only truly safe place for human beings on planet Earth, SCP-3008, also known as the Infinite Ikea. No sun had ever shone in there, only the lights, which fizz and flicker far above. Everyone inside thinks of it as a prison. Little do they know, what's left of humanity out there would kill to be inside this sanctuary. Alice had a team of 10 with her. Their mission was simple: continue the mapping effort of the area surrounding their community and collect rations for the rest of the camp. It was dangerous work, especially as night drew close, but there were certain rewards. When they reached a feeding station, they were able to enjoy fresher food than anyone else. All they needed to do was wager their lives for it. To Alice, it seemed like a fair trade. Her Lieutenant Darcy kept watch to the north. He and several others wielded makeshift spears made from curtain rods and clubs fashioned from bedposts. Knives scavenged from the kitchen section hung from their belts in makeshift holsters. During the day, they were little more than a precaution. At night, it could mean the difference between life and death. Speaking of, Darcy kept a close watch on a member of staff. It was a lanky, faceless monster in that garish uniform, with a bulbous, oversized head and long arms, hanging slack like pulled taffy, dragging its knuckles along the ground as it stumbled along. Darcy thought it darkly funny how stupid they could look in the daytime, like crash test dummies rejected from the assembly line. Bear stood close by. He never gave any of them his real name, so they took to calling him Bear, because he was big, hairy, and would probably tear you to shreds if you got on his bad side. He wielded the largest club of all, a customized creation with sharp objects sticking out of it on all sides. It cleaved the heads of many staff members off their bodies. Bear seemed to relish the task of putting those monsters down. For him, it was easy and fun. That's why he was an essential asset on these missions, a berserker. Most of the grunts shoveled as much food as they could carry in IKEA-branded Tupperware and coolers. The more they gathered, the longer it would take for them to be forced out beyond the safe walls of the haven they built inside this Swedish flat-pack hell. They all made do with what they had in here. It was all they could really do. 2 members of the team were unaccounted for, Cyril and Joseph, would pass for reconnaissance experts down here. They seemed to have an innate sense of direction, as though they were somehow in tune with the IKEA itself. They would be sent out on scouting missions, searching for resources, food, other survivors, and most prized of all, potential escape routes. It was a dream, a fantasy, that someday one of them would find the exit and lead the rest of them to salvation through it. Alice had been trapped in the Infinite Ikea for 6 years, going on 7 now. She had long since given up on dreams of escape. All they could do was accept their situation, get used to it, and just try to survive under these circumstances. But those circumstances were about to change. Everyone looked up when they heard panicked breathing. It was Cyril, just Cyril. The party clutched their weapons just that little bit tighter, unsure of what had happened. Their rules were clear. Scouting duos must never ever separate under any circumstances. Getting lost in the store and being isolated when the lights went out would be a death sentence. So if Cyril was returning alone, frightened, tears streaking down his face, then something truly awful had happened. He told Alice and the rest of the group that something had attacked him and Joseph. When Alice told him that was impossible, that the staff wouldn't show active aggression until lights out until someone attacked them first, Cyril shook his head and let out a heaving sob. He told them that the creature that attacked them wasn't a member of staff. It was something else entirely. Something he'd never seen inside the Ikea before. A true monster. Whatever this creature was, it moved around a corner incredibly fast. It spoke in a way that was almost human, but something was off about it. Something that sent a chill down Cyril's spine just thinking about it. He recalled that the creature was large and blob-like, flesh-colored, with long grasping tendrils that whipped and flailed unnaturally. These tendrils had wrapped around and grasped Joseph. He hadn't been quick enough. The two of them were too shocked by the sight of it to react in time, and then it was already too late. It grabbed Joseph and yanked him off into an adjoining aisle. Cyril still remembered his haunting screams, getting quieter and quieter as he moved further out of sight. On some level, everyone hoped that Cyril was lying. It was preferable to believe that he himself had snapped and murdered Joseph for some unknown reason, as opposed to some new, stronger, and even more dangerous creature that was now inside the Ikea. Was this some kind of upgrade? As they acclimated to the environment, adapted, gotten better at surviving here, had the Ikea in turn created deadlier countermeasures to destroy them all, just when you thought you had a handle on things. But if Cyril was telling the truth, and there was some kind of creature lurking in the store, or potentially more than just one, then they could be in danger just standing here. They gathered up the group, along with any supplies worth taking, and set off back to their community. They would need to deliver the bad news so they could potentially prepare for the worst. It was just one of the many communities housed within SCP-3008. Many have theorized over the years that the Infinite Ikea acts as a kind of nexus point for Ikeas all across the multiverse, accounting for the truly insane number of people who have gone missing without a trace into the building over the years. There were children who had been born in the Ikea, raised in the Ikea, known nothing but the Ikea. Nobody knew an exact number for sure, but it was more than possible that the population of a small country resided within its walls. Sometimes communities would fracture and fall apart, occasionally due to a lack of resources or infighting, other times due to an overwhelming attack from the staff that physically destroyed the settlement, often leaving many of its members dead in the process. Those who weren't picked off while wandering the store in the following days would likely integrate into other nearby communities as refugees. Life was cruel in the Infinite Ikea. By the time Alice and her party returned to their community, it was almost lights out. They spoke to the community leaders and informed them of Joseph's tragic disappearance, as well as this awful new creature that Cyril claimed had taken him. They thought it best not to inform the rest of the community tonight. It might hurt their focus and cause unnecessary panic. Alice agreed to join the watch that night. She could feel something wrong in the air. Even more so than usual, there was something terrible in this anomalous Ikea. Alice stood atop the furniture wall with several other rangers. As the lights flickered off, the distinctive calls sounded across the store from the activated staff members.
The store is now closed. Please exit the building.
It was almost soothing in its familiarity, compared to the frightening thoughts that Cyril had left swimming through her mind. The staff she could handle. It was at least the devil she knew, and there were worse beasts than the devil out there. She knew it in her bones. They killed a few staff members that happened to wander towards the community and began beating their deformed fists against the walls. All standard procedure. But as Alice's eyes adjusted to the darkness, she saw a huge shape in the distance. It looked like a mountain that breathed. A huge wobbling mass of flesh, moving impossibly fast for a creature of its size. It was so much vaster than the creature that Cyril had described earlier. Was this a different one, or had it simply gotten bigger? Either way, it was coming straight towards them. The community came alive in sudden panic. Every able-bodied adult grabbed their weapons and prepared for the fight of their lives behind the wall. Whatever this monster was, they needed to kill it as quickly as possible before it destroyed everything they built. Sadly for everyone inside the community, this was one fight that none of them were prepared for. The beast crashed into the furniture wall, crushing it inwards. People struck at the monster's immense and terrible flesh with their weapons, making awful wet slaps, but seeming to cause no lasting impact. It just kept rolling in, grasping everyone it could with its long, sinewy tendrils. But the horrors were only just beginning. With the wall destroyed, the staff began to pour in, chanting in monstrous unison.
The store is now closed. Please exit the building.
It was a massacre, perhaps one of the worst that the inside of the Infinite Ikea had ever seen. While the community battled the giant flesh beast, the forces of the staff swarmed and overwhelmed them. Darcy was tangled in the nightmarish tentacles of the beast. Bear was surrounded by a truly insurmountable number of staff members, each one balling their terrible fists and beating him to death. Somewhere Cyril screamed, though his scream was soon cut short. Alice watched in horror as everything she'd known was destroyed. Alice realized her friends were dead and her community was in ruins. She grabbed her spear and did the only thing she could. She ran. She ran from the lost cause that had once been her life, tears running down her cheeks. What had even happened? What the hell had that great monster been? The Ikea's trump card? She ran aimlessly for as long as she could, then walked and eventually limped. She went on for hours, getting lost deeper and deeper into unknown territory. She'd stop when she was dead. Why not? She had little left to live for. But like the Holy Grail, when she eventually truly gave up and stopped looking for salvation, it found its way to her. As she turned a corner down a mysterious aisle, she saw something that she hadn't seen in years. Glass double doors. She stifled a sob. Could it be the way out of here after all this time? And it was. The world. Escape. She'd lost everything, but regained this. Outside, dawn was breaking. After years, the great red sun. It was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen in her life. She took a deep breath, smiled, and stepped into the light. Now go check out how to actually beat SCP-3008, the Infinite Ikea, and SCP-001 When Day Breaks for more insights into the nightmares we've been experiencing in today's episode of SCP Explained.